6 months. That's how long it took for me to realize I was completely gone for a guy who probably would never look at me the same way I looked at him. Derek Williams had just moved into the apartment next to mine, and I, Connor Matthews, 28 years old, a systems analyst for 5 years at the same logistics company in Atlanta, was about to discover that the routine I so cherished would be completely transformed. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get access to more stories like this. My apartment had always been my sanctuary. 3 years living in the same place, same residential complex, same window view showing similar buildings in an urban dance that calmed me. Work from 8 to 5, home, Netflix, a cold beer, maybe some takeout on weekends when I was too lazy to cook. It was a predictable, organized life, exactly how I liked it. A proud gay man for years, I kept my love life discreet but never hidden, respecting my neighbor's space while they respected mine. The complex where I live has this peculiar characteristic of respectful proximity. Everyone knows each other by sight, nods politely in the elevator, but nobody gets into anyone else's business. 2-bedroom apartments, a pool I rarely use, a common area I frequent even less. I prefer the tranquility of my balcony, where I drink coffee every morning watching Atlanta wake up, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with the urban aroma that has become familiar over the years. My mornings follow a sacred ritual. I wake up at 6:30, have strong coffee, 2 slices of whole wheat toast with butter while I check urgent emails that invariably aren't that urgent. Weekends mean cleaning the apartment to the sound of playlists that mix indie rock with some classics I inherited from my dad. Experimenting with new recipes in the kitchen. I have a soft spot for Asian dishes, and binge-watching series everyone has already seen but I'm always late to watch. It's funny how you get used to solitude when it comes with comfort. Not that I was lonely by choice, but after a few relationships that ended without major trauma or great passions, I settled into a comfort zone that didn't hurt anyone, especially myself. Atlanta offered enough options for a social life when I wanted one, but my apartment was where I truly relaxed, where I could be completely myself without putting on a show or dealing with expectations. What you hear here is just the beginning. The complete, unfiltered stories with all the details you can imagine are available now. See the link in the description right now. It was on a regular Thursday in March that everything started to change, although I didn't know it at the time. I was getting home from work, climbing the stairs because the elevator was out of service, a recurring thing in our building, when I heard noises coming from the apartment next door. Furniture being dragged, some muffled words I couldn't make out, the typical sound of someone moving in. The apartment had been empty for 2 months, ever since Mrs. Martinez moved to be closer to her daughter. I didn't think much of it. Neighbors come and go, especially in a complex like ours, which mainly attracts young professionals who might need to move for work. I put on my usual playlist, made a simple pesto pasta, and settled onto the couch for another episode of a crime series I was following. The first time I saw Derek was the following Saturday. I was going down to pick up a package that had arrived at the front desk when he appeared in the hallway carrying a box that looked too heavy for one person. Tall, with brown hair a little disheveled from the effort, and a gray t-shirt that showed off muscles that were clearly the result of regular gym workouts. What caught my attention the most was the smile he gave me as our eyes met. "You must be my neighbor," he said, putting the box on the floor and extending his hand. "Derek Williams. I just moved into 4B. Connor Matthews, 4A. Welcome to the building," I replied, shaking his hand and trying to ignore how warm and firm it was. Man, what a relief to know I have a friendly neighbor. The realtor wasn't lying when she said this was a quiet place. Derek had a deep voice, the kind that naturally commands attention, and a contagious energy that was a complete contrast to my more reserved nature. I offered to help with the move almost as a reflex, in that polite way you offer, secretly hoping the person will decline. Derek accepted right away, with an enthusiasm that caught me by surprise. We spent the next 2 hours carrying boxes, assembling a shelf that came with instructions in 3 different languages, none of them useful, and talking about random things that make strangers become acquaintances. I found out that Derek worked as a sales manager for a sports equipment company, was 26 years old, had grown up in a small town in rural Georgia, and had moved to Atlanta after a promotion he described as the chance of a lifetime to finally get out of the sticks and see the world. He spoke animatedly about plans to explore the city, meet new people, and maybe find a Georgia girl to teach me the culinary secrets of the South. The casual mention of women was automatically registered by my internal radar. Not that I had any expectations. Experience taught me to spot straight guys from a mile away, but it's always good to have the information clear from the start to avoid future awkwardness. Derek was the type of guy you know will be popular quickly. Extroverted without being invasive, confident without being arrogant, with that kind of natural charm that makes people feel comfortable in his presence. As we assembled his coffee table, he told funny stories about his previous company, imitated his coworkers' accents, and made witty comments about the questionable quality of department store furniture. "Dude, you saved my life today," Derek said when we finished organizing most of his stuff. "Let me at least buy you a pizza or something." We ended up ordering Thai food and eating it in his apartment while watching a basketball game on the TV he had set up with impressive speed. Derek turned out to be one of those guys who actually understands sports, not just pretends to impress other men. He explained strategies, told stories about players, and made predictions that were surprisingly accurate. Throughout that afternoon, I realized that Derek had a physical naturalness that made me slightly uncomfortable. Not in a bad way, but in a way that I had to be conscious of to not show it. He gestured a lot when he spoke, casually touched my arm when he wanted to emphasize a point, and had that masculine habit of taking up space without asking for permission, which I'd always found attractive in straight guys. "Man, it's been a while since I've just relaxed like this," Derek commented when the game ended. "Small towns have their advantages, but sometimes you just want to sit down, watch sports, and not have to explain your whole life to someone." I understood perfectly what he meant. There's something liberating about interactions that don't require a personal history, family context, or explanations about life choices. Just two people enjoying a moment without the pressure of creating deep connections instantly. When I left Derek's apartment that night, I already knew I had liked his company more than I should have. It wasn't just the physical attraction, though that definitely existed, but the ease with which we talked, how he seemed genuinely interested in the things I said, how he managed to make me laugh in a way that hadn't happened in a long time. In the weeks that followed, we developed a casual friendship that worked perfectly for both of us. Derek would show up at my apartment 2 or 3 times a week, always bringing beer or a snack, to watch games that were on TV. We discovered we had similar tastes in sports, mainly basketball and football, and similar opinions about the questionable quality of some famous coaches. Derek had a natural talent for cooking, especially when it came to making quick, tasty snacks. Elaborate sandwiches that combined ingredients I'd never think to mix. Loaded nachos he'd prepare in my kitchen as if it were his own, and homemade sauces to go with just about anything. I'd reciprocate by cooking more structured dinners on weekends, discovering that Derek genuinely appreciated my Asian culinary experiments. "Dude, where'd you learn to cook like this?" he asked once, tasting a pad thai I had made following a recipe I'd adapted over several tries. "YouTube and patience," I replied, laughing at my own answer, which sounded simpler than the reality of several ruined dinners before I got it right. Derek would talk about his new job, the difficulties of adapting to the pace of a big city, and the differences between selling sports equipment to small rural stores versus large urban chains. I discovered he was ambitious in a healthy way. He wanted to grow professionally, but without losing the connection to the real people his sales affected. He also talked about dates. Derek went out regularly with co-workers, women he met at company events or through apps. He always told these stories in a funny, non-malicious way, but also without much enthusiasm. I started to notice a pattern. He described the dates as pleasant but without sparks, interesting but without a real connection. "The women here are different from back home," he commented in one of these conversations. "More sophisticated, more independent, which is great. But sometimes it feels like we're speaking different languages, you know?" I offered advice when he asked for it, always trying to be helpful without revealing that my experience with heterosexual relationships was purely theoretical. Derek seemed to value my perspective, saying I had a different way of looking at things that helped him understand situations that confused him. During these months, I realized that Derek was physically affectionate in a way that many straight men aren't. Pats on the shoulder when he agreed with something I said. Quick hugs when his team won an important game. Natural closeness on the couch during tense matches. For him, these were normal gestures of male friendship. For me, they represented moments of silent tension that I learned to manage without showing. The attraction I felt for Derek intensified gradually, fueled by our regular time together, and the discovery of aspects of his personality that attracted me beyond his physical appearance. Derek was kind to waiters and delivery drivers, remembered details from previous conversations, and showed genuine interest when I talked about work or family. He had a smart sense of humor without being condescending, and he knew when to give space and when to offer company. Most importantly, Derek made me feel comfortable being myself. I didn't have to modulate my personality or hide aspects of my life, except obviously, my attraction to him. We talked about politics, movies, professional ambitions, and childhood memories, without any topic being considered too personal or inappropriate. At the same time, I started to notice signs that Derek wasn't completely satisfied with his romantic life. Besides the unsuccessful dates, he'd make occasional comments about loneliness, about the difficulty of finding genuine connections in a big city. There were moments of introspection when he seemed to question aspects of his own life that he had previously considered settled. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm looking for the right person in the wrong places," he said once. In one of those more serious conversations that usually happened after a few beers, relaxed our need to keep everything superficial. "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely curious where this reflection might lead. "I don't know, man. Maybe I have very specific ideas about what a relationship should be, based on a reality that no longer exists. Or maybe I'm looking for something I can't quite define." Derek didn't elaborate further on the topic that night, but the conversation stuck in my head. There was a vulnerability in the way he spoke that contrasted with his usual confidence, as if he were admitting doubts he rarely shared with other people. As the months passed, our friendship deepened within the limits we both tacitly established. Derek continued to be my attractive, straight neighbor, with whom I had developed a genuine but safe connection. I continued to be the discreet and reliable guy who offered friendship without romantic complications. At least that's how things seemed on the surface. Underneath, I was constantly fighting against feelings that intensified with every interaction. Derek was becoming more than a passing crush. He was becoming someone I cared for deeply, someone whose company had become essential to my routine and emotional well-being. The problem with unrequited feelings is that they create a constant tension between the desire for closeness and the need for self-preservation. Every affectionate gesture from Derek was simultaneously gratifying and torturous. Every story about frustrating dates with women made me feel hopeful and guilty for that hope. Derek, in turn, seemed increasingly comfortable in my presence. He started showing up at my apartment without warning, knowing he would always be welcome. He treated my kitchen as an extension of his, my fridge as a shared resource. He left personal things scattered around, a jacket on the couch, a phone charger on the coffee table, as if he were unconsciously marking his territory. "Dude, you don't mind this whole invasion, right?" he asked once, a little awkwardly, as if he had suddenly realized how much space he was occupying in my life. "Of course not," I answered honestly. "It's good to have company." And it was true. Even with all the emotional tension Derek represented, his presence transformed my apartment from a lonely space into a place where interesting things happened. Conversations that stretched late into the night, laughter that echoed through the walls, the feeling that someone genuinely cared about how my day had been. On top of that, Derek was going through a challenging professional phase that required more hours at the office and more pressure for results. He'd arrive visibly tired on our TV nights, sometimes falling asleep on my couch during less interesting games. In those moments, I'd watch his relaxed face, the way he breathed deeply when he could finally rest, and I felt a tenderness that went far beyond physical attraction. It was on one of those nights that Derek made a comment that stayed in my mind for weeks. "You know what's weird, Connor? Sometimes I feel like I relax more here with you than on my own dates. It's like I can just exist without having to impress anyone." "That's not weird," I replied. "Friendship should be like that." "Yeah," he agreed, but there was something in the way he said it that suggested he was thinking about something more complex than simple friendship. Atlanta's summer arrived with an intensity that turned the city into an urban sauna. It was an especially suffocating Saturday, when Derek came back from the gym visibly frustrated. I was relaxing on the couch, enjoying the air conditioning and a series I had started the night before, when I heard his door slam louder than usual. It didn't take him 5 minutes to show up at my door, sweating from head to toe, with an expression that mixed irritation and exhaustion. "Connor, man, can I use your shower? Mine decided to stop working today of all days, and I'm literally melting here." "Sure, no problem," I replied immediately, getting up to let him in. "Is everything okay? You seem a little—" "Oh, just another disastrous date last night, and today's workout was a total mess." I tried to blow off some steam at the gym, but I think I just managed to make myself even more irritated. Derek ran a hand through his sweat-damp hair, making it even more disheveled. "Sorry to dump this on you, dude. Relax, that's what friends are for." I grabbed a clean towel from the hallway closet and handed it to him. "Go ahead, make yourself at home. I'll make something cold for when you get out." Derek disappeared into the bathroom, and I stood there for a moment, processing the situation. It was the first time he had used my shower, and for some reason, It felt more intimate than all our nights watching TV together. I shook my head, trying to push away inappropriate thoughts, and went to the kitchen to make cold drinks. The sound of running water created a strangely calming soundtrack in the apartment. Derek had left his gym bag near the door, and the smell of sunscreen mixed with male sweat lingered in the air. I turned the air conditioning up to the maximum and prepared 2 glasses of cold lemonade, trying to focus on anything other than the image of Derek naked in my shower. When he came out of the bathroom, he was wearing only a towel tied around his waist, steam escaping from the half-open door behind him. His hair was dark with water, small drops slid down his defined chest, and his skin had that reddish tone typical of someone who had been under hot water for a while. "Dude, what an amazing shower. The water pressure is perfect," Derek commented, grabbing the lemonade I had made and drinking half the glass in one go. "Mine feels like one of those camping showers compared to this." "It's one of the few good things about this apartment," I managed to reply, struggling to maintain eye contact and not let my gaze wander over the expanse of exposed skin. Derek settled onto the couch as if being half naked in another guy's house was the most natural thing in the world. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes for a moment, letting out a long sigh. "Derek, are you okay? Besides the broken shower, I mean." He opened his eyes and looked at me differently, as if he were assessing how much he could share. "Man, can I be honest with you? Sometimes I feel like I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. These dates, these attempts at relationships, it's like I'm following a script someone wrote for me. But it doesn't make sense when I really think about what I want." "What do you mean?" Derek was silent for a moment, twirling the empty glass between his hands. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, almost hesitant. "You know that feeling that you should be feeling something you just don't? Like there's a piece missing from the puzzle, but you can't figure out what it is?" I knew exactly what he was talking about, but for completely different reasons. I think everyone goes through that at some point. Yeah, but with me, it's happening all the time. With all of them. Incredible, interesting, attractive women, and I don't know, man. It's like I'm watching my own life happen instead of actually living it. Derek leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, the towel adjusting dangerously low on his waist. "And the worst part is, I relax more here with you, talking about whatever nonsense, than on any of those elaborate dates." My heart started beating faster. There was something in the way he was talking that felt different from the other times we had discussed his romantic life. "Derek," I began, but he interrupted me. "Connor, can I ask you a weird question?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Have you ever been with a guy?" The question caught me completely off guard. For months of living side by side, Derek had never directly questioned my sexuality, although I had never actively hidden the fact that I was gay. "Yes," I replied simply. "And what's it like? I mean, compared to, I don't know. Is it different?" "Derek, can I ask why you're interested in this?" He ran his hand through his damp hair again, a gesture I had learned to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "Because lately I've been thinking about things I've never thought about before, and you're the only person I feel comfortable talking about this with." The air in the apartment seemed to have gotten thicker, charged with a tension that neither of us was naming directly. "Derek, are you questioning your sexuality?" "I don't know if it's exactly that. It's more like I'm questioning everything I've always assumed about myself." He looked me directly in the eyes. "Especially after spending so much time with you." My whole world seemed to pause at that moment. Months of repressed feelings, of unrecognized tension, of moments I had interpreted as casual friendship suddenly took on a completely new dimension. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe I've been looking for connection in the wrong places all this time. I'm saying that when I wake up in the morning, I'm usually thinking about what excuse I can use to come over here." Derek got up from the couch, the towel still precariously positioned. "I'm saying that last night, during that disastrous date, I spent most of the time wishing I was here with you." I got up too, my body reacting before my mind could fully process what was happening. We were a few steps from each other, and for the first time in months I didn't try to hide what I was feeling. "Derek, are you sure about what you're saying? Because if it's just curiosity or confusion, I need to know now." "Connor, I've never been more sure of anything in my life, and I've never been more nervous." I took a step towards him, closing the distance between us even more. "You don't need to be nervous with me." Derek reached out and touched my face, his fingers still slightly damp from the shower. "I was hoping you'd say that." The first kiss was hesitant, experimental. Derek kissed differently from the guys I was used to. Less technique, more emotion. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine, breathing heavily. "Man, that's different. Better. Much better than anything I've ever imagined." My hands found his waist, feeling his warm, slightly damp skin. Derek responded by pulling my t-shirt by the hem, his hands exploring my chest with a curiosity that was both innocent and incredibly exciting. Derek, do you want to take it slow? We don't have to do anything you're not ready to do. Connor, I've been ready for this for months. I just didn't know this is what I was wanting. We kissed again, this time with less hesitation and more urgency. Derek guided me towards the bedroom, the towel finally giving way and falling in the hallway. When we got to the bed, he stopped and looked at me with a mixture of desire and vulnerability. I don't know exactly what I'm doing, he admitted. We'll figure it out together, I replied, pulling him in for another kiss. What followed was a careful and passionate exploration. Derek proved to be a surprisingly intuitive lover, making up for his lack of experience with men with a genuine attention to my reactions. Every touch was a discovery, every movement a silent question that I answered with my own body. When we finally came together completely, Derek whispered my name in a way I had never heard before, like a prayer, a confession, a revelation. We moved together, finding a rhythm that felt natural despite the newness of the situation for him. The climax came intensely for both of us, Derek surrendering completely to the experience while I finally allowed myself to express months of repressed desire. We lay intertwined afterward, sweaty and satisfied, processing what had just happened. Connor, Derek said eventually, his voice hoarse. Thank you. For what? For letting me discover this about myself. For being patient. For being exactly who you are. Derek, you don't have to thank me for anything. That was incredible for me too. He turned on his side to face me, tracing lazy patterns on my chest with his fingers. So what happens now? I mean, I know you probably have more experience with situations like this. There's no instruction manual, I answered honestly. We'll just figure it out. Derek smiled, the same smile that had won me over the day we met, but now filled with a completely new intimacy. Can I confess something? I kind of hoped your shower would break today. Seriously? Not literally, but I needed an excuse to be here in a different way, to create a situation where maybe I could be honest about what I was feeling. I laughed, pulling him closer. Well, it worked perfectly. We spent the rest of the afternoon in bed, talking, discovering each other in ways that went far beyond the physical. Derek told me about moments during our friendship when he had felt something different, but didn't know how to interpret it. I shared about my long-standing attraction and how I had struggled to keep it hidden. Dude, all this time I thought I was going crazy, Derek laughed. Making up excuses to come over here? Paying attention to details about you that I've never paid attention to in any woman. Like what kind of details? Like how you always smell good, even when you're just at home relaxing. How you make that concentrated little face when you're cooking. How your eyes get different when you're really interested in what someone's saying. Derek, I know, a little stalkerish, right? But man, it was impossible not to notice those things. As day turned into night, we both knew we'd have to face the reality of what had happened. Derek would have to go back to his apartment eventually, and we would both need to process how this would change our dynamic from then on. Connor, I don't want this to be just a one-time thing, Derek said when we finally started getting dressed. I know I'm still figuring things out about myself, but I know I want to figure them out with you. Are you sure? Because things could get complicated. Dude, things were already complicated. At least now I understand why. 2 months have passed since that transformative afternoon, and our reality has become something completely new, and yet simultaneously familiar. Derek and I haven't defined labels or established formal rules about what we are to each other. Instead, we've let our connection evolve organically, navigating unknown territory with a patience that surprised us both. The first few weeks were a mix of discovery and caution. Derek continued to live in the apartment next door, but our dynamic changed in subtle and profound ways. He still came over to watch games, but now he'd arrive earlier and stay later. We still cooked together, but the casual touches took on a new dimension. Fingers that lingered when passing spices, hugs that lasted a few seconds longer than necessary. Derek was going through a process of self-discovery that I watched with admiration and patience. Some nights he'd arrive introspective, clearly processing internal issues he had never had to face before. Other times he was animated, as if he had discovered aspects of himself that explained old confusions. You know what's funny? He commented one night, as we were on the couch watching a game neither of us was really paying attention to. I always thought those dates with women didn't work because I was choosing the wrong people, or it was the wrong time in my life. And now? Now I realized the problem wasn't with them. It was with me trying to force something that just wasn't natural. Derek paused, playing with the label on the beer he was holding. It's like I spent years trying to use the wrong key on a lock, convinced that if I tried hard enough it would eventually work. These reflections weren't accompanied by anguish or regret. Derek seemed at peace with his discoveries, more relieved than disturbed to finally understand aspects of himself that had always been a source of confusion. Our intimate moments evolved naturally. Derek quickly lost his initial hesitation, revealing a passionate nature that had been dormant for years in relationships that didn't make sense to him. I learned that he was surprisingly tender for someone with such a robust appearance, always attentive to my reactions, always willing to explore new forms of connection. "Connor," he said one Sunday morning, when we woke up intertwined in my bed after a night that had naturally extended from the couch to the bedroom. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Do you ever worry about what people will think? About us, I mean." The question caught me by surprise because, honestly, I hadn't thought much about it. What people? I don't know. Neighbors, co-workers, my family back home. I immediately understood that Derek was facing aspects of reality that I had processed years earlier. The difference was that I had gone through this process of acceptance gradually, while he was discovering everything at once. "Derek, the only opinion that matters about our relationship is ours. Everything else is just noise. I know you're right. It's just that it's a lot of new stuff at once, you know? It's not just discovering that I can be in a relationship with men. It's discovering that I can be in a real relationship, period." These intimate conversations became a regular part of our routine. Derek needed to verbalize his discoveries, and I found myself in the unfamiliar role of an emotional mentor for someone navigating issues of sexual identity. It was a responsibility I took seriously, constantly reminding myself that Derek's choices had to be his, not influenced by my own emotional investment in the situation. Professionally, Derek started to excel at work in a way that hadn't happened before. He attributed it to a general sense of authenticity that he was experiencing for the first time in his adult life. "It's like I was using energy to maintain a performance I didn't even realize I was doing," he explained one night. "Now that I don't have to pretend anymore, I have so much more energy for things that really matter." I watched Derek become more confident, not just about our relationship, but about himself in general. He made more assertive professional choices, expressed opinions more clearly, and seemed more comfortable in his own skin. It was beautiful to watch, even knowing that part of this growth would eventually lead him to bigger questions about his future. Our families became an inevitable topic. Derek had casually mentioned that his parents expected him to bring a special Georgia girl home for the holidays. I had navigated family issues related to sexuality years before, but Derek was facing this for the first time at 26. "It's not that they're prejudiced exactly," he explained about his parents. "It's more that they have very specific expectations about how my life should unfold. Traditional marriage, grandkids, the whole story. And how do you feel about that?" "Honestly, relieved. For years I felt guilty for not being able to give them what they wanted. Now I realize it wasn't a matter of not being able to. It was a matter of not wanting to." These conversations made me reflect on my own journey. My parents had taken some time to adjust when I came out, but we eventually reached a place of mutual acceptance. The difference was that I had gone through it at 22, without a serious relationship to complicate the situation. Derek was navigating identity and relationship simultaneously. "Connor, can I ask you a personal question?" "All your questions are personal," I replied, laughing. "Have you ever thought about what it would be like to introduce someone to your family? Like a boyfriend, I mean." The question carried implications that neither of us had verbalized directly. We were talking about the future, about a serious relationship, about turning our current situation into something public and permanent. "Yes, I've thought about it," I answered honestly. "Why?" "Because I've been thinking about it. About you. About what it would be like to take you to meet my parents, to introduce you as, I don't know, as the important person in my life." "And how do you feel thinking about that?" "Nervous, but excited. Mostly excited." It was at that moment that I realized Derek had made an internal decision about us that went beyond experience or personal discovery. He was talking about real commitment, about building something together that would have practical implications in our lives. The following weeks brought an even greater intimacy. Derek started leaving clothes at my apartment, not by accident, but intentionally. We bought groceries together, planned weekends as a couple, and developed routines that assumed a future continuity. "Dude, my apartment is starting to look like a storage unit," Derek commented one day, laughing at his own observation. "I spend more time here than there. Does that bother you?" "The opposite. It makes me think that maybe it's time to make some practical changes." Derek was referring to the possibility of us making our cohabitation official, a step that would mean much more than simple convenience. It would be a public statement about our relationship, a declaration that we were building something permanent together. 2 weeks before we marked 3 months since that transformative afternoon, Derek came home. And yes, I had started thinking of my apartment as both of our home, with a determined expression that I had learned to recognize as a sign that he had made an important decision. "Connor, I need to talk to you about something. Is everything okay?" "More than okay. I called my parents today." My heart stopped for a moment. "And?" "I told them about you." I didn't go into details about the whole discovery process, but I told them I'm in a serious relationship with an amazing guy named Connor, and that I'd like to bring him to meet them for Thanksgiving. Derek, dude, how did they react? Better than I expected. My mom asked a million questions, obviously. My dad was a little quiet at first, but then he said he just wants to see me happy, and that anyone who makes me happy is welcome in the family. I felt an emotion I couldn't immediately name. Derek had made a brave decision that made our relationship official in a way that would change everything. We were no longer two neighbors exploring a connection. We were a couple building a future together. Are you sure about this, Derek? Because once you take that step, Connor, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. These last few months with you have shown me what it's like to be in a real relationship. I don't want to go back to that version of myself that was always trying to force connections that didn't exist. That night, we made love with a different intensity, charged not just with passion, but with commitment. It was sex between people who had decided to build a life together, who had chosen to face the world as partners. "So," Derek said afterward, tracing lazy patterns on my chest, "what do you think about meeting my parents for Thanksgiving?" "I think I'm terrified and excited at the same time. Welcome to my world for the last 3 months." He laughed. Today, reflecting on everything that's happened since that afternoon when Derek asked to use my shower, I realized that the most transformative connections in our lives often arise from the simplest and most unexpected moments. Who could have imagined that a casual request to take a shower would turn into the most important discovery we had both ever made about ourselves? Derek taught me that sexual identity can be fluid, that profound discoveries about ourselves can happen at any age, and that courage sometimes means simply allowing genuine feelings to guide our actions. I learned that patience and understanding can create space for transformations that benefit both people in a relationship. Our story continues to unfold. Derek is still navigating aspects of his new identity. I'm still learning how to support someone I love through a process of self-discovery, and we are both figuring out how to build a relationship that honors both our individuality and our connection. The apartment that was once my lonely sanctuary is now our shared home. The routine that was once predictable and isolated now includes conversations that stretch late into the night, plans made together, and the comforting certainty that someone genuinely cares about every detail of my day. If you've made it this far into this story, you probably recognize something familiar about unexpected connections and the courage it takes to embrace changes that completely transform your life. Like this video if you believe the best stories start when we allow ordinary situations to reveal extraordinary possibilities. Subscribe to the channel to follow more accounts of personal discoveries, relationships that defy expectations, and the beauty of finding someone who helps you become the best version of yourself. What you hear here is just the beginning. The complete, unfiltered stories with all the details you can imagine are available now. See the link in the description right now. Comment below if you've ever had a moment that completely changed your perspective on yourself or on someone important in your life. I love reading your stories, and who knows, maybe your experience will inspire the next video on the channel. Until next time, and remember, sometimes the most significant changes start with the simplest gestures.